Thanks everyone for joining us today. Our Top 3 in 30 webinar today is provided for you by the Delaware National Estuarine Research Reserve. Our reserve is managed by DNREC's Division of Climate, Coastal, and Energy, and it's part of a national network of reserves funded by NOAA. My name is Lynn Pusey. I'm the Training and Engagement Coordinator here at the Reserve. Today's webinar is Recreational Health Protections in Delaware's Public Waters. Today's webinar will be presented by Ashley Tabibian. Ashley is an environmental scientist with DNREC's Shellfish and Recreational Waters programs. She'll be talking about recreational health protections in Delaware's public waters. Thanks, Ashley, for being here with us today. I'm really excited to have you join us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and turn it over to you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the great introduction, Lynn. Thank you all for tuning in today. As she said, my name's Ashley Tabibian, and I'm an environmental scientist with the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Controls, Shellfish and Recreational Water Programs. I am here to talk to you today about what we do on our programs to protect public health in the Delaware's public waters, specifically in regard to eating raw shellfish or using our public recreating areas. So to start and to keep on trend with the name of the webinar, the top 3 things that I want you to take away today are to only go clamming in approved shellfish harvest areas, check water quality before swimming, and to take extra care if you are in an at-risk group. To dive a little bit deeper into these points, we are going to start off with discussing our shellfish program. For the purposes of this program, the term shellfish refers specifically to molluscan bivalves, including clams, mussels, oysters, and scallops. Although crabs, conchs, and other species are commonly called shellfish, they are not regulated under this program because they are typically prepared and consumed a little bit differently. Our program focuses on filter feeding shellfish that may be eaten raw and whole. As they're filtering the water for foods, these animals can accumulate pathogens and other harmful substances from their surroundings. For an example, an oyster can concentrate pathogens up to 100 times the surrounding water. And also because the entire animal is consumed, including internal organs where contaminants may accumulate, it is essential to harvest these shellfish only from waters that are classified as approved. So how can you find out which waters are approved for shellfish harvesting? You can find that information on our shellfish program website at de.gov/shellfish. The website provides an overview of the program and the work we do to support the harvest of shellfish throughout Delaware. In addition to information about shellfish growing areas and their classification, the website highlights other important aspects of the program, including plant inspections and our coordination with enforcement and the Division of Fish and Wildlife. We will touch on that a little bit later. The website also features an interactive map, and that allows the public to view Delaware's shellfish growing areas and to determine where recreational shellfish harvesting is permitted or prohibited. The map is a helpful tool for checking the classification in an area before heading out to harvest. So if you go to that de.gov/shellfish, you'll see a page like this. This is the top of our main page, and it goes on to explain some of those additional things we do. Including national safety guidelines that we follow. To the right, you'll notice that we have a contact us button, link to regulations, and a few sheets. However, this is also where you're going to find that interactive map. If you click on this link here, it takes you to a page that looks like this. This interactive map shows Delaware's designated shellfish growing areas and their current harvest classifications, which are determined primarily using fecal coliform bacteria data. As a reminder, this map can be accessed through our shellfish program website there on the screen. Our program routinely collects and analyzes water samples from the Rehoboth, Indian River, Little Assawoman, and Delaware Bay. Maryland also assists us by collecting a sample in the Assawoman Bay in the portion that sits in Delaware. We use bacterial data collected through this, along with sanitary survey information and evaluations of potential pollution sources, to determine which waters are suitable for the safe harvest of shellfish. We follow a national standard, which I will talk about shortly. The different colors on the map represent the classification assigned to each area. Areas in red are prohibited, meaning that shellfish harvesting is not permitted. Areas that are blue are approved, meaning that the applicable water quality standards for harvesting are met. And if you look towards the bottom corner of the map, you will also notice a small area in yellow. The areas shown in yellow are classified as seasonally approved. Because the fecal contamination of greatest concern in our program is contamination from human sources, we pay particular attention to marinas and other areas where human activity may have a greater effect on that water quality. Seasonally approved areas are open for shellfish harvesting from December 1st through April 15th, when recreational boating and marina activity are generally lower. And then they're closed to harvesting from April 16th through November 30th, when the increased seasonal boating activity creates a higher potential for human-related contamination. This is the map zoomed all the way out, and you can see the prohibited areas all the way up the Delaware Bay into the river. This Water Harbor, the area to the right of the pier, which is to the right of the end of that on the right, in between the horn, is popular for clamming. And we're actually going to be opening up a little more area there, hopefully. This is the Rehoboth and the Indian River Bay, where you can see a little closer up of those seasonally approved areas. You'll also notice that we prohibit the tributaries. Lastly, this is the Little Asswoman Bay and the portion of Asswoman Bay in Delaware. Remember to only go clamming in the blue areas on the map. This is an interactive map, so you can open it on your phone and you click a little button and it'll zoom in to where you are and it'll show you if you're in a prohibited or an approved water. But just a quick note about those yellow areas. Our shellfish program is currently working on a regulation update. As a part of this process, the areas that are currently classified as seasonally approved will be reclassified as either approved or prohibited, eliminating that seasonal classification and the associated harvesting restrictions. The boundaries of the existing closure areas will also be updated to reflect the most recent data and our current understandings of the areas needed to protect public health. To briefly highlight some of the other responsibilities of our program beyond establishing the harvest classification areas, our staff also conduct routine inspections of shellfish shippers and processors operating in Delaware. These inspections help ensure compliance with the national food safety requirements, as well as regulations specific to the handling of working with shellfish. A permit from the program is required for businesses that receive shellfish directly from harvesters, sell shellfish at the wholesale level to retailers, or conduct the certain shellfish processing activities. Through permitting and inspections, we ensure that shellfish remain properly handled and traceable from the point of harvest to the distribution to the consumer. We also work with the Division of Fish and Wildlife and Natural Resources Police. While our program focuses primarily on public health, growing area classifications, and sanitation requirements, Fish and Wildlife and the Natural Resources Police oversee catch limits, harvesting methods, licensing requirements, and other regulations affecting commercial and recreational harvesters. Finally, the state of Delaware is a member of the Interstate Shellfish Sanitation Conference, or the ISSC. The ISSC brings together representatives from state and federal agencies, industry, and other partners to promote consistent shellfish safety standards nationwide. Working in cooperation with the FDA, the ISSC develops the requirements contained in the National Shellfish Sanitation Program Model Ordinance. As a participating state, Delaware is required to follow these guidelines to ensure that our shellfish program meets the national standards. So just a few tips for keeping shellfish healthy after you harvest are to maintain shellfish at a temperature of 45 degrees or less. Do not place them in non-approved growing waters, and always take care to avoid cross-contamination. So that concludes the shellfish portion, and we're going to move on to our recreational waters program. As an overview, this program tests for Enterococcus bacteria and then issues advisories if necessary. We then publish this data in an online public database. To break this down, let's start with what exposure means when we talk about exposure to bacteria. The type of water exposure that we are primarily concerned with is known as primary contact. This occurs during activities in which a person's head is submerged and there is a reasonable likelihood of accidentally swallowing water or getting it into the nose, ears, or eyes. This can happen while swimming, diving, water skiing, or participating in other activities that involve direct and prolonged contact with the water. Exposure to contaminated water can affect people in several ways. One of the most common illnesses is gastroenteritis, which may cause symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and stomach cramps. Other possible symptoms could include fever, headaches, and infection or irritation of the ears, nose, throat, or eyes. The risk of becoming ill can vary depending on the type and level of contamination, amount of water exposure, and an individual's overall health at the time of exposure. If you develop symptoms or have concerns following recreational water exposure, please contact your healthcare provider for appropriate medical guidance. I will sound like a broken record today, saying to always contact your doctor. I also want to briefly review our sampling schedule and the general timeline for receiving our results. Our monitoring season is typically runs from mid-May through mid-September, so we are on the tail end of this year's season. And although individual sampling dates are subject to change depending on holidays, weather conditions, staffing, or other logistical considerations, during the season, we conduct a larger sampling run on Mondays. It's comprehensive and includes most of our sample locations. While on Wednesdays, we do a shorter, more abbreviated run. We will review the specific locations included later. I'll show you exactly where we sample. Because the laboratory analysis requires a 24-hour incubation period, results are generally available approximately 24 hours after samples are delivered to the laboratory. If the initial sample produces an elevated result, which we'll talk about that threshold as well, we collect a second confirmatory sample as soon as possible. Once the confirmatory result becomes available, approximately another 24 hours later, we evaluate the findings and determine whether any additional action is necessary, such as issuing a swimming advisory. I'm sure all of you have heard about swimming advisories in Delaware at some point. So what is an advisory? If that second confirmatory sample comes back above the safety threshold, an advisory is issued for that location. An advisory may also be issued when the new sampling data is incorporated into that site's geometric mean calculation, and that geomean exceeds the water quality standard. I will explain to you what geometric mean is here shortly. It is important to emphasize that a swimming advisory is not the same as a beach closure. An advisory does not prohibit people from entering the water. Instead, it provides the public with timely information that bacterial levels are elevated and that there may be an increase of illness associated with primary contact activities. Individuals can then use that information along with their own personal health circumstances to make an informed decision about entering the water. So when we're testing and we're issuing advisories, what are we issuing these advisories for? When we sample, our primary concern is the potential presence of enteric pathogens. These are illness-causing microorganisms that are associated with the intestinal tracts of humans and other warm-blooded animals. Hepatitis, norovirus, Shigella, there's a couple different ones. These are widespread in the environment and may enter recreational waters from a variety of sources. Potential sources may include human and wildlife fecal matter, stormwater runoff following rainfall, illegal sewage discharge, wastewater or sewage spills, large number of beachgoers, or rough and turbulent conditions that resuspend things that were sitting on the bottom. Research has shown that the risk of illness is generally greater when the fecal contamination originates from human sources. However, there's not a quick and efficient test to determine that. Combine that with the fact that there are so many types of enteric pathogens. This has led us to test for something called Enterococcus. Enterococcus itself is harmless. However, its elevated concentrations have been associated with the possible presence of other more harmful disease-causing microorganisms. For this reason, Enterococcus is used as an indicator bacteria to help us assess water quality and estimate the potential risk of illness. Our program follows the National Recreational Water Quality Criteria established by the EPA, which are shown here on the screen for both freshwater and marine water. Each sample produces a single sample result of an Enterococcus concentration that we compare to that threshold, determining whether additional sampling or advisory may be necessary. However, a single sample result should not be interpreted as a simple yes or no answer as to whether the water is completely safe for swimming. To better understand water quality over a longer period of time, we use another important metric, the geometric mean, or the geomean. You'll also see the standards for the geomean on the screen, and you'll notice they're considerably lower. Because bacterial counts vary widely, often by orders of magnitude, the geometric mean gives a more accurate picture of that central trend in the data without being distorted by the occasional extreme spike or heavy result. This geomean is a type of average of all of our sampling results and is calculated with every new sample available on our website. The weekly sampling we do is fantastic for looking at a snapshot of the health of the beach. So that instantaneous or that single sample result that we get. But the geometric mean allows us to identify long-term trends at specific sample locations. Because we only sample 1 to 2 times a week, the average is a better indicator of general water quality and illness risk. So we encourage the use of this number in decision making. If there is an advisory, there are a few ways you can find it. Main page of our website, de.gov/recwater. Here, you will see the instructions for how to sign up for an email list that sends out alerts if an advisory is issued. But I will show you a simpler way in a minute. If you click on these buttons, it will take you to our recreational water monitoring map, which is where you will find the uploaded data. If you click those links, this is the left side of the web page. And down here, you'll see the gold colored box, which is also how you can sign up for email alerts. I do want to take a second here to talk about icons. The icons are an orange triangle for beaches where no advisories are issued and an orange circle for beaches where an advisory is issued. If the initial sample that we talked about comes back elevated, that icon is changed to a clock indicating that we are resampling. If that second confirmatory sample comes back elevated, the icon is changed to a yellow flag indicating an advisory. At the end of the season, the icons change to snowflakes to show that we are no longer sampling for the year. The right side of the page, when you go to de.gov/recwater, we'll have this map where all the sample locations are displayed. I'll show you what it looks like when you click on one in a little bit. So these are where we sample from Slaughter down to Fenwick State Line. In Lewis, we do Savannah Road and Georgia Avenue. We do the Cape Shores Public Swimming Beach. In Cape Henlopen State Park, we do the main bathhouse, Herring Point, near Gordon's Pond, and near the fishing pier. In Rehoboth, we do Duval, Virginia Ave, Rehoboth Avenue, and Queen Street. We do Dagsworthy and Swede Street in Dewey. We do Tower Road, Keybox Road, Conquest Road, both South and North Indian River Inlet and 3 R's Road along Coastal Highway. And then we do Bethany, South Bethany, Fenwick Island State Park, and Fenwick Island State Line. These are the locations where we will issue advisories for. Additionally, we sample the bays and some inland ponds, but these locations are not issued advisories. They are solely, the data is solely for informative and educational purposes. We sample Broadkill, Slaughter, Bowers, Woodland, Augustine, and the Delaware Bay. In the inland bays, we do Tower Road on the bay side, Savage's Ditch, Dewey Beach, and Dickinson Avenue, New Road, Asselwoman Recreational Area, Coastal Kayak, the James Farm Ecological Preserve, and Holt's Landing. Inland, we do Lake Como, Lum's Pond, Silver Lake and Dover, Killen's Pond, and Trap Pond. Additionally, when we do our shellfish sampling, we take some samples for this, so you'll see some open water samples in the inland bays and the Delaware Bay. When you select a beach on the map, you'll be directed to a web page that looks like this. You'll see at the top of the page the name of the beach and a brief description. This is Conquest Road Beach, and it is an unguarded beach along the Atlantic Ocean. Here's where you find if there are any current or historical advisories. This is where you find that geometric mean that we spoke about earlier that tells you the long-term trend and health of that beach. And these are those single samples that we, values that we talked about being a good snapshot of the beach's health. You can see here that Conquest has not had any advisories for, and the Enterococcus results are generally low or what we consider non-detect. The threshold's 104, and right here we're seeing 5s and 10s. We're looking for pathogens that may cause illness from submersion of the head during swimming or other recreational activities. In all natural illness risk exists in all natural waters, but it is higher for those in the at-risk groups. This can include children under 5, people over the age of 65, and people with certain medical conditions or weakened immune system. Illnesses from recreation and natural waters are rare and generally mostly of concern to people in the at-risk group. We monitor bacteria levels to empower the residents and visitors to balance risks with benefits of enjoying Delaware's beautiful beaches. Again, I'm a broken record, but if you ever have any concerns, please contact your doctor. Some tips to reduce exposure are to shower after the beach and wash hands before handling food. Know that the risk is greater after rainfall and with primary contact, and always avoid swimming with open cuts or sores, or it's best to avoid swimming. Some tips to reduce the number of enteric pathogens in our recreational waters is know that it is illegal to discharge human waste from boats, pick up after pets, and do not attract wildlife by feeding them. And most importantly, use the restroom where appropriate. We're going to fly through these next 2 slides here. These are just some that we have developed. They're available for digital and print. Please reach out if you want a copy of one. And lastly, I want to finish talking about some non-enteric illness causing agents outside of the scope of swimming advisories. So these are really common in our waters, but we do not test or issue advisories for them. Vibrio is naturally occurring bacteria found in all seawater, but the threshold that causes infections is unique to the individual and their specific health conditions. So we don't test for it, but we like to let people know that it exists both from the rec water and shellfish programs. Again, if you're at risk, take note. If you don't feel well after swimming, contact your doctor. Swimmer's itch is a rash from an allergic reaction to microscopic parasites. Most cases do not require medical attention and do unfortunately just cause discomfort. And lastly are harmful algal blooms. Under specific conditions, there are certain phytoplankton species that can explode in population, causing what is known as a bloom. And under even more specific conditions, some of those phytoplankton have the ability to produce biotoxins that can be harmful to human and animals. While fairly rare in Delaware, we do monitor for them with expanding efforts. So please contact our group if you observe any discolored water, abnormal behavior from animals, or large numbers of deceased animals along the water or in the water. So just to recap, our big takeaways today is to only go clamming in approved shellfish harvest areas, check water quality before swimming, and to take extra care if you are in the at-risk group. And thank you all for sitting through that today, and I'll take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Ashley. Really appreciate all that information. The documents that you showed, the 2 that you showed towards the end there, yes. Are you able to send those to me, and then I'll just go ahead and send those to folks in the follow-up email?
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to be transparent. I'll send them both to you, but we are redoing our handouts and our educational material. This one mostly will stay the same, but this one will change as we made a lot of changes to the beach program. So in the next few months, I for an updated version of the site as well.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. I don't see any questions in the chat just yet. Folks, we do have a couple more minutes. So if you have any questions while we have Ashley with us, go ahead and drop those in the chat. I actually had a few for you, if you don't mind. I was wondering why the testing window is mid-May through mid-September. Like, why not test year round?
That is a really great question. And there's a couple of reasons. There are some states, this is a federal cooperative, so there are some states that do test year round. Some crazy ones like Oregon and Washington are in the water in the middle of the winter. We don't for a few reasons. The main one being we're only really seeing people in the water from mid-May through mid-September. And the whole point of this is public protection. So it's wise to utilize our resources when it's most active. like I said, we are undergoing some changes that will change how we might distribute some of those resources to the more important or more used beaches, but it really has to do with when they're getting used.
That makes sense. Um, Another question I had, so you have the areas that are approved for recreational shellfish harvesting. And I would imagine it's possible for those areas to change from year to year. Does that, or is that like static all the time?
It is not year to year. We have to undergo an entire regulatory change in order to change those areas. So that is something we are doing right now. It's a huge undertaking, and that's why
Okay.
we're going to see the change in that seasonally approved. So it is possible for them to change, but it's not ever going to be an annual thing. It is, and
Okay.
when we go to change them, it will go to public notice, I believe, as well. So it'll be a whole thing.
Okay. Okay. Um, if some of those areas that are like outside of those prohibited red areas end up with some higher contaminants, how long would it take contaminants to like leave the shellfish? You know, like
Um,
is there a window where you're like, oh, that area is not good to harvest for X number of weeks until it's gone, or
Yeah,
how
it's
does that work?
21 days. So
Okay.
it takes less time for them to depurate or to purge all of that. So the standard is to go with 21 days because you know they've had enough time at that point.
Okay.
I will say that is specific for this program. So there are other substances that might not filter out in that time frame. But when we're talking about fecal contamination, um, for an example, if there was a wastewater treatment plant failure and we had to close, we would close for 21 days after the leaking stopped.
Okay. That's yeah, thank you. That's a great example. Okay. All right. Um, well, those are all the questions that I had. And I very much appreciate your answer. Don't see any more in the chat. So at this point, what I will do, I'm going to say thank you to everyone who joined us today. Thank you, Ashley, for your presentation and all of that information. I will be sending a follow-up email to everyone who registered. I'll include the links to both of the websites that Ashley talked about. I'll add some other resources and information. So, Ashley, you and I can chat afterwards, make sure I have all the right things to send out to everybody. The webinar was recorded, is being recorded still technically. So, you'll be able to view it after the fact as well. A little plug, our next webinar is Thursday, September 20th. And we will be talking about DelDOT's Community Connections Initiatives. We'll talk about their transportation alternatives programs, their biking, things like that. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to put a link in the chat so you can check out our upcoming webinars. And then finally, for everyone on the call today, the very last link you'll see is an evaluation. Appreciate if you open that now. It's just 3 quick questions, really simple, really quick, but it does help us out, helps me determine what things you're interested in learning more about so we can schedule more of these. And so it's 2:30. We did our 30 minutes on the dot. Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you, everyone else, and enjoy the rest of your day.